Alright, hello people. This weekend we have Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois for the WBO World Heavyweight title. And yeah, man, this is one of the best fights, not only in British boxing, not only in heavyweight boxing, but in world boxing in general. This is an absolutely fucking mouth-watering matchup between two big hitters. There's no way it goes the distance. And yeah, man, both men, I would say, are on good form, despite Dubois, of course, coming off a loss. He's coming off a loss to the best guy in the division. I feel like a lot of people are kind of writing off his accomplishments. You know, this man has been a world champion. This man is arguably a top 2 heavyweight in the world, right? Think about it logistically. What have you done for me lately, right? In terms of Wardley, he's won a world title, so maybe you could put him at number 2. But like in terms of what have you done for me lately, Dubois' resume is strong. What he's achieved is strong. And the time in which he's done it is strong. Like he's just all around accomplished a good amount in what is a short amount of time, and also coming off being written off. You know, he's kind of being he's in a bit of a similar position here to what he was in after the first Usyk loss. You know, which is ironic considering he's coming off another loss to Usyk. But yeah, Fabio Wardley is kind of the I don't know if you'd call him a Cinderella man. I guess something like that, like a Rocky type character. You know, he really shouldn't be here, but we're all fucking glad he is, let's be honest. And obviously these videos are trying to be as unbiased as possible, but I would sorry about that, people. I would really want to see him at least beat Daniel Dubois, just to kind of, you know, really stamp in his legacy in a way. Like, he's won the world title. That's something nobody ever thought he did, and then he's defended it against a world-class operating Daniel Dubois after beating Joseph Parker. You know, it just kind of is like the cherry on top, really. And anything past that's really a bonus, in my opinion, because he's just done so well already. Despite some obvious technical deficiencies, some deficiencies in terms of experience. But yeah, man, let's get into the recent form and the resumes of the two men. Of course, we've got Daniel Dubois, who is 22-3, 21 wins by knockout, 3 of his losses are all by stoppage. You know, the man is 6'5", 78, 8-inch reach, is still young, really only just hitting his prime at 28. You know, could have a long while left in the division, and really could carve out a strong legacy in the division. Now, what's crazy about Dubois is he actually really hasn't won a fight in nearly 2 years since the Anthony Joshua fight, which is fucking crazy, but that is down to inactivity. He's only had 1 fight since the Anthony Joshua fight, and that was to the great Alexander Usyk, where there's absolutely no shame in losing to him. He's, of course, just a phenomenal boxer, and, every aspect, he's just, he's Alexander Usyk, goes without saying. But previous to that, he, of course, blasted out Anthony Joshua in 5 rounds. That was an absolute demolition job over, Anthony Joshua, who, has definitely passed his best, but at that point was on decent form, He was coming off an Ngannou win, which definitely got him a bit overhyped. It's Francis Ngannou, who had 1 professional boxer fight and lost. But it was coming off a decent win against Otto Wallin, at least, which is probably the best win of that run. Other wins over Robert Helenius and Jermaine Franklin. But Anthony Joshua's resume and, just who he is kind of speaks for itself. The magnitude of that moment at Wembley Stadium really kind of made Dubois into a bit of a cult hero for a period of time. Previous to that was his win over Filip Hrgović, which was exceptional. Stopped Filip Hrgović in 8 rounds. Really poured the pressure on Filip Hrgović, took Hrgovic's best shots, carried on marching forward and just cut Hrgović up. Since then, Hrgović has bounced back with some 2 decent wins. One over Joe Joyce, who, yes, isn't what he was, but in that fight actually looked pretty decent. And another win over British level fighter David Adelaide, who is, not bad, but definitely British level. Someone who Fabio Wardley, Dubois' opponent, actually holds a win over. And previous to that was his win over Jarrell Miller, and Jarrell Miller, I believe, has just been made a mandatory for the WBA. I don't know if it was a final eliminator or not, but he's very high up in the rankings, coming off that win against Lenia Pero, of course. So, Very strong run from Daniel Dubois. Of course, before that was a loss to Usyk, where there was a whole low blow controversy, that really fucking stupid controversy. A fight he was bested in. Before that was Kevin Lorena, where he had a bit of a scare. Trevor Bryan, Joe Joyce, Nathan Gorman, who's someone him and Fabio Wardley have both faced. I don't think the performances are all too comparable. But yeah, man, strong resume from Danny Dubois. You know, it's really held up by those wins over Anthony Joshua, Philip Hergovich, Jarrell Miller. Anthony Joshua, of course, being a staple win, but there are a few other decent wins in there, like the Kevin Lorena win isn't bad, and the Nathan Gorman win is a good British level win. Getting into Fabio Wardley, he holds a record of 20 wins, 0 losses with 1 draw. 19 of his wins coming by way of knockout. He is 31 years of age. He's 6'5", which I'm not sure I quite believe, but has a 78-inch reach. Yeah, man, undefeated. Crazy, you know, because considering he comes from no amateur background whatsoever, comes from a white collar background, and you know, he's older than Dubois, which is just insane. But he's done really well for himself. I'm going to be honest, I am a big fan. I'm a fan of both of these men, but it's hard not to root for Fabio Wardley. But we're going to try and go into this as unbiased as possible. Now, of course, Fabio Wardley's last win was over Joseph Parker, which is an exceptional win, considering who Joseph Parker has been, who he was at the time. You know, Joseph Parker, long-term heavyweight contender, really a staple in the division. Went into that fight for a record of 36-3. Was coming off that short notice win against Martin McCauley, a win over Zheli Zhang, win over Deontay Wilder. You know, he was on a really, really good run of form. You know, back in the day, beat the likes of, you know, Derek Chisora, fucking Andy Ruiz, and did he beat? He beat Carlos Takam and Hughie Fury. You know, he beat some decent names in his day. Yeah, Joseph Parker, exceptional win. That was a good fight. You know, Parker came into it a little bit more aggressive than he really should have. He probably should have, you know, stuck to his boxing a bit more. He's of course an exceptional boxer, but in recent times has really started to rely on his power, which in a fight against Fabio Wardley gave Fabio Wardley just one too many opportunities. Wardley was hitting him with clean counters quite often in that fight, and that eventually led to the sequence where he kind of had Parker hurt, came in flurried. I do think it was stopped early, but I do think it was probably heading that way just because of Parker's aggressiveness. It was representing Wardley with a lot of opportunities. Wardley's very good at seizing those opportunities, probably down to his team isolating those moments, and he capitalised. It was probably coming anyway, but yeah, he beat Joseph Parker by TKO in round 11. Great win, really is a great win. And looks even better, you know, because a lot of people will think Daniel Dubois ducked Joseph Parker, whether he did or not, I don't know. It was kind of crazy, actually, because we're getting to a point in this channel where I've been so much more consistent as of recent that I covered Fabio Wardley Parker, and I actually covered the old Dubois Parker fight, you know, the pullout and all that, so that's kind of crazy. But previous to that, he got a win over, I guess you'd say, contender. He's not the most proven of contenders, but 12-0 Justice Hooney, who Fabio Wardley came back in round 10 to knock out in absolutely devastating fashion. You know, this was really, really exciting. You know, he was getting thoroughly beat by a very sharp Justice Hooney that night. You know, Justice Hooney was just having his way with Fabio Wardley. The ring generalship, the combinations, the hand speed, you know, everything was just flowing for Hooney that night. He was really having one of those breakout performances before getting caught with a straight right hand in the 10th round and get counted out. You know, it was unfortunate for Hooney, but just a great moment. It fucking really was. It's one of those things where you just never forget where you were. Hooney's of course come back with a decent win over Fraser Clark. Speaking of Fraser Clark, we move on to Fraser Clark, who Fabio Wardley knocked out in the first round, which Fraser Clark is a British title contender, you know, not not a British heavyweight title contender in terms of at the world stage, but he's a contender for the British title. That's kind of his level, and that's what they fought for, the British and Commonwealth titles. There's not much I can say about this fight without getting too much into their first fight, which was of course a draw. What happened was their first fight, Fabio maybe treated Frazier with a bit too much respect, maybe tried to box him a bit too much, and in the second fight, Frazier maybe kind of came into that thinking it'd be the same way, was a little bit too expectant. He was expecting a boxing match, and instead got Fabio Wardley, who just stuck it on him and dented his head, man, which was just insane. Previous to that fight, we had the draw, which I just mentioned, was one of the great British heavyweight title fights of all time. You can make an argument Fraser Clarke won that, but it was close. I had no problem with a draw on the night. It was only watching it back that I kind of thought, yeah, Fraser Clarke maybe deserved the win there, but it was close. There's no fucking lying. One of the great British heavyweight title fights of all time. Really was just an absolute barnstormer. And what made the rematch so shocking as well. Previous to that, David Adelaide, like I said, British title contender. Good fighter, powerful, limited, and I remember Fabio dealt with him very well. He also holds wins over Nathan Gorman. Stopped him in round 3. I believe that was controversial. I don't know. There was it might have been the Michael Coffey fight, which was controversial, but there was a controversial stoppage in there, which is an unfortunate theme with some of Fabio Wardley's fights, like the Parker fight, for example. Not too common, but has happened once or twice. Now getting into the actual fight itself, Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois for the WBO World Heavyweight title. How do I see it going? This is a fight I could see going a variety of ways. I could see Daniel outboxing him. He is the better boxer. You've got to give Daniel pretty much every attribute in this fight. Hand speed I'd give to Wardley. Timing I'd probably give to Wardley. In terms of foot movement, foot speed, kind of ring generalship, power, know-how, just general know-how in a boxing ring. You've got to give it to Daniel Dubois. He's been doing it since he was a kid. And Fabio Wardley, the attributes he has is that he is just a puncher in general. His team, Ben Davison, that lot are really good at isolating weaknesses in opponents and just finding that one moment. Lee Wood commonly does this. Fabio Wardley himself, they tried with Anthony Joshua to kind of turn him into that. Of course, against Daniel Dubois himself, that didn't quite work out, but Fabio Wardley is he's much better suited to that style, I think, than Anthony Joshua, athletically, and just kind of where he's at. Joshua has some boxing ability, he doesn't need to rely on attributes. Fabio kind of does. He's not a boxer, he is limited, which is why I maybe could see Daniel Dubois blasting Fabio Wardley out, because he's been in there with that Ben Davison style. He's seen it. But I think Fabio Wardley's resilience, his toughness, the fact that I don't think he'll look scared in this fight. Joshua, quite frankly, looked jittery and unsettled in that Dubois fight. I don't think Fabio Wardley will get like that. And if he's not like that, he won't jump in his shots early like Joshua. He won't throw with reckless... Well, he will, because he's fucking Fabio Wardley, but you know what I mean. He'll fight in explosive bursts and time them well. It's just the type of thing where, yes, I give Dubois the boxing edge. I think his boxing skill set, his boxing know-how, I think everything is pretty much better than Fabio Wardley. But he's hittable. He's very, very hittable. He's got 2 layers of defence. Foot movement and this kind of wedge defence where he kind of gets his arm up in the way. It's hard to explain, but yeah, he's got some foot movement and wedge defence. There's no head movement, there's no guard. Presumably, Daniel Dubois will be the man in this matchup to kind of push Fabio backwards. That's going to leave a lot of opportunities for Fabio. If he is very gung-ho, very aggressive, which I kind of expect he will be, considering he's been in there against a Ben Davison fight in Anthony Joshua, and that's the way he approached it, there's not going to be a lot of time for moving back. So that's kind of out of the question, and I think Fabio, despite being a very limited boxer, and despite not being very defensively good, is actually a really good counterpuncher, if that makes sense, which is weird because that's something that relies on defense, right? Parker, he is timing him with some really good shots. Hooney, of course, is prolific. It's like the most obvious example of Fabio Wardley counterpunching and the timing. Despite him not being a very good defensive fighter, a lot of his knockouts come off of counterpunches, which I think Dubois is very, very open for. I think Ben Davison and that team being able to have two fights where Dubois is the opponent, Anthony Joshua, of course, they would have done a lot of film study, a lot of analysis for that fight, and for this fight with Fabio Wardley, they would have done more of the same. I think they're going to find a chink in Daniel Dubois' armour if it's not already been found, and I think Fabio Wardley is the man to be able to execute that. Unlike Anthony Joshua, I think he's much more suited to it. We have seen Dubois take some good shots. Filip Hrgović is the best example. He was taking Hrgovic's best shots. The thing is, I don't think Hrgović is a very good one-punch kind of... He's got power, but I don't think he's got a big one-punch banger. I think it's more trick. I think he kind of wears you down with punches. He's a volume guy more than a one-punch power guy, whereas Fabio's a one-punch power guy. Even though Dubois was taking good shots off of Hrgović, we saw when he got in there against a guy like Usyk, he can be dropped legitimately, which is the first time he's ever legitimately dropped. If Usyk's able to drop you like that, I think Fabio Wardley will be able to find that counter at least once, and that shot's going to hit a hell of a lot fucking harder than anything Hrgović, anything Usyk gave you. And it is a shot that puts you out. It's heavyweight division, doesn't matter how tough you are, you go out if you get hit by one of those shots. But by no means am I writing off Dubois. This fight could go fucking any way. Any way you can think of that sounds realistic, it could go. It could go Dubois blasting him out. It could go Wardley catching him early. It could go late and Wardley catches him. It could go late and Dubois grinds him down and batters him. The only way this fight doesn't go is a really fucking technical boxing match where they both stand on the edge of range looking and feinting at each other. If that does happen, for one, I'm pissed off because what the fuck, this is meant to be a fucking big heavyweight fucking, shootout. So I'd be kind of disappointed there, but this fight is a true 50-50. I don't disregard Dubois. I am not 100% certain in my pick of Fabio Wardley. It's ironic because Fabio Wardley is typically the guy you pick against, and then he does it. He's not really the guy you pick, so I could see myself picking Fabio Wardley to win this and Dubois winning. It's probably going to happen. So my picks with Fabio Wardley, 8th round. I think 8th round. I think he gets it done. A tricky fight to predict. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this fight. I'm sorry if it was a bit scrambled. I feel so out of it. It's like 1:30 in the morning, which isn't an unusual time for me to film these videos. I just kind of woke up early today, so I just feel extra tired. But I think I did a decent job. I think I got my thoughts out. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.